Hello again, whiskey friends. Thanks for joining, everybody. Do you ever wonder if Hazmat whiskey is just another gimmick? There are some brands that will upcharge for a bottle when it goes up over 140 proof. Now, for me, I don't care what proof it is, as long as the whiskey has good flavors, has a good mouthfeel, has a good finish. The proof doesn't really matter. If anything, sometimes that high alcohol content can really just wash over the palate and numb those flavors rather than enhance them. Now, I recently had the pleasure of going over to Connecticut and hanging out with Irene Tan. And on that day, she was dropping a 13-year Buckner's here that was 141.2 proof. Now, personally, I usually don't drop this much money on a bottle, but Irene spoiled us throughout the day. We got to taste so much amazing whiskey that in order to support Irene and her store, I was willing to buy this. I also got to try it before I buy it, and I knew it was delicious. But for me, it does beg the question, is 141 proof the best proof for this whiskey? So what I'm going to do today is compare different samples proofed down to different points to see if there is a proof point that I prefer more than the barrel strength. So thank you for joining today, whiskey friends. Let's kick off the show. All right. So as I said off the top, we are getting into a 141.2 proof, 19-year Buckner's. Now, to help me with this experiment, I actually found a calculator over on Whiskey Advocate. So check this thing out. They just got this on their website there. I found it when I searched for proof calculator. It's apparently been on there for almost 8 years, and they gave you different methods that you could do the proof. So what I did here was I put in 0.5 ounces. I said the barrel proof was 141. It didn't like decimals. And I said the desired proof was 130. It then told me to add 0.04 fluid ounces to the sample to make it 130. I then calculated that over to milliliters, used some handy dandy equipment here, and I've ended up with different sample glasses here that are different proofs from the original barrel proof all the way to 130, 120, and 110. What I am interested in understanding today is, as I compare these side by side, do they actually give different flavors? Does the water enhance or pull out different aspects of this whiskey? Now, as these whiskeys sit here and continue to mingle with the water that I poured into them about now a half hour ago, trying to let these mingle the best I can, I am going to taste one more sample of it at barrel proof to get a baseline, take a little bit of a break, and then come back here and do the flight. Now, that'll be a few minutes or so in my time. That'll just be a few seconds in your time. On the nose of this Buckner's is some lovely oak and cherry. Those are the main two things that stick out at me at first impression. But as you get deeper into it, there is a custard there. I'm almost leaning into calling it almost a lemon-leaning custard. There's some nice baking spice there, some black pepper as well, maybe even blackberry too. I continue to think about the fruits as I get inside this nose. Yeah, getting a layer of powdered sugar and crust as well. So some nice depth on the nose there. Let's get into the palate for a first impression. Cheers, everybody. So at barrel strength here, at the 141 proof, very, very deceptive at this proof. If anything, I feel it more well after the finish, where it makes the middle of my palate literally tingle. But while I was letting it rest on my tongue, and I took a sip and tried to think through the flavors, I really wasn't having a problem with the Hazmat or the proof. Now, I will say the flavors kind of mirrored the nose for the most part. Was getting this lovely custard up front, transition to mid-palate, really brought that oak and cherry. And then on the finish, you get more of the barrel, the baking spices, the crust, the black pepper. And I swear that lemony tinge to the custard with that oak is kind of what lingers and especially hits on the sides of the tongue. So what we're going to see here is what this does at different proofs. The way that I laid out this flight is that glass A is barrel proof, glass B is 130, glass C is 120, and glass D is 110. And my intention of giving it a few minutes to get off my palate here is to start at the 110 and work my way up with the impression of everything I just said. As I go through the samples, I will put it in the corner here, but just know the lower the letter, the lower the proof. Lower the letter. I guess that makes sense. You know what I mean. So I'm going to reset here for a second and I'll be right back. All right, let's begin here. And before you hit me up in the comments here, I realize now, before we get started here, I was as careful with this as I can, but I don't have any way to guarantee that I nailed the drops of water and the milliliters in there to hit the proof. But I tried hard. But this is simply the best way I know how to do this, at least at my house. So if you have other tips and tricks on how to do this, would love to hear it in the comments. And if you've ever done an experiment with this before, let us know how it went in the comments as well. But in all my years, I have never done something like this to think about these type of results and the flavor differences we could be getting into. So we're going to start at glass D, and with glass D, it is the lowest proof, roughly around 110, if I did everything correctly. Cheers, everybody. Oh my gosh, on the nose, that is wild. It brought out the oak in such a overt, older way that I am actually kind of like fascinated with what I just smelled there. It smelled like something that was more 15, 16 years. And what's wild too is I have a 14-year-old proprietor. Oh, it should be right here. I have a lower proof, 14-year Lucky 7 old proprietor here at 105.7 proof. And that is the first thing that shot into my mind was like, oh, it smells like that. Man, all the flavors are there, but to tell you what, they're more fully fleshed out in a lot of ways. That's actually very surprising to me. Let's see if it washed out the palate. Cheers, everybody. Man, nice mouthfeel. Was a little washed out on the front of the palate. Transition to the mid palate and the finish, though. Mirrored the nose entirely. The oak profile really stepped up to hit center stage, and that dark cherries there. Not a lot of that spiciness, that black pepper, the crust that I was talking about, and even the custard calmed down on the finish. It was just oak and cherry all the way through. Tell you what, though, if that's what that one tastes like, this is going to be interesting as we work our way up and see if there continues to be a difference and or a certain escalation to some flavors. But I am now more excited for this experiment than ever. This is going to work. All right. Let's get into glass C. This one should be approximately 120 proof. On the nose, noticeably brighter, less of that oak. Oak is still there, but really presenting itself more as a chocolate. And then rather than just cherry, my mind went to more of a melody of stone fruits. Even getting a little peachy. If not peachy, at least a subtle apricot. Splitting hairs on that. All right, let's see what this one does on the palate. Man, I'm going to stick by that. A lot of medleys of stone fruits here, not just cherry. The oak still definitely emerges, and now on the finish, I'm getting more of the custard, just like I did on that original sample. Strangely enough, I think I'm leaning towards the 110 proof versus the 120 proof so far. There was just something really, really nice about that oak and over-the-top cherry in the 110. All right, let's keep stepping up the proof. We're going to go into glass B. This one should be approximately 130 proof. Cheers, everybody. On the nose, we are getting closer to that first impression. That more lemon-leaning custard is now emerging, which is interesting to me, by the way, because what is happening on the nose as we work our way up in proof is that the nose is actually getting brighter, and these different layers of brightness are actually coming in each time. This one's more directly cherry, and now the oak is less pronounced on the nose than it was the other two samples. All right, let's get in for a taste. Cheers. Oh, definitely the best mouthfeel so far. Probably the best palate overall. This is pretty unrelenting right now. Up front, the cherries and the fruit is over the top. The transition to mid palate is all about cherry and custard. And then as you flow into the finish, turns into a chocolate, more direct oak with a little bit more of that brighter custard that continues to linger on the palate. Well, now we are going to get into the Hazmat sample here. So this is the OG at 141 proof. And before we get back into this one, at least right now, it's a competition between B and D. The 120 proof didn't resonate with me, which is interesting. The nose on A, more full flavored, more concentrated for sure. Even to the point where I say it's tight compared to what I saw on the B glass. The thing that got added though, back to this sample that wasn't there on the other three glasses is the baking spice profile, the crust aspects, the black pepper. The fruits are turned down, the oak is turned down, and that custard is still there. So I guess there's actually two realizations, at least off the nose now, on this flight, where the more water brought out more oak, and the higher the proof brought in brighter flavors, particularly that custard and how the fruits present themselves. All right, let's see what it does on the palate. Cheers, everybody. Woo! That was the best one. Man, it's just all aspects. It's actually kind of cool how this flight did build upon itself like assembling like a Lego set. Dark oak, cherry up front, transition to the mid palate. Once again, brings in the custard. And then as you get into the finish, the black pepper, the baking spices, the crust, and then that brighter, almost lemon flavored custard hitting on the sides of the tongue, which none of the other samples did. So that sides of the tongue part of it and where it's finishing is happening because of that higher proof. All right, well, I think that was a very successful science experiment. Having them all side by side, you know they're cousins, but they are distinctly different whiskeys. I do think I prefer it at barrel proof. My second place of this flight, though, was actually the 110 proof. I mean, going back to the nose again, it smells like something that is more 15, 16 years old. Really, really brought out the oak with the amount of water that was put in there. It's also got the darkest cherry note amongst all the samples. Gosh, the more I sip on that D sample, too, it's even reminded me of the 1924. And then B at 130 proof was my third place, and C at 120 proof actually had some off-putting elements in my last place. That would be a wild flight to do blind. So in the end, this science experiment, I guess, taught me quite a bit here about experimenting with different water levels. And I can imagine that this is probably somebody's job to do this to find just the right proof point to hone something in. But the fact that I flip-flop so much with the 140 proof coming in first and the 110 proof coming in second shows the delicate nature of this blending process. Now, technically, I just mixed them all together. I don't know what I'm actually trying to achieve with this. What will I end up with? I guess something at about 125 proof, implying the approximate equal proportions. All right, final sip. Let's see if the 125 proof is actually the winner. Man, that one's got a crazy dark cherry to blackberry nose. I wasn't getting a whole lot of the other expected flavors, though, in the oak profile. It's weird how the oak profile just changes based on the proof. On the sip, yeah, this one definitely rests between the 120 and 130 proof. Again, it actually leans more towards that 120 proof. I don't care for this one either. This is great at 110 or it's great at 140. The in-between spots are kind of confusing, but really great whiskey all around. Thank you, Irene, for hosting us on our trip to Rhode Island and Connecticut. Really, really appreciate you putting up with our ragtag group of friends. But this was also a very fun way to experiment with an Augusta 13-year Hazmat bottle. So what do you think about this science experiment? Does this inspire you to try this experiment on your own? Be sure to check out that website I found on Whiskey Advocate to give you those precise proportions of water to add. And if you had tried this before, what were your impressions of this experiment? Because this totally came to a conclusion I wasn't expecting. And just remember, while you can always have more whiskey, you can never have enough whiskey friends. So take care of those around you, and we will catch you on the next one. Goodbye, everybody.